My name's Sarah Harris. I'm the IPS team leader for Cheshire and Wirral Partnerships. I've been in IPS now since 2003 when we were a supported employment service, and we moved to individual placement and support in around 2010. IPS stands for Individual Placement and Support. IPS was identified in the NHS long-term plan. It was suggested that all community mental health teams and early intervention teams should provide the IPS service. With this, NHS England brought out 2 waves of money. Wave 1 to expand existing services, and Wave 2 for areas that didn't have an IPS service. So IPS supports people to gain meaningful paid employment based on their preference. It supports people by linking them to the right job match, by contacting employers in their chosen vocation and working with those employers to secure paid employment. It then provides ongoing support for both the client and the employer. Many people have asked how IPS is still working during the current COVID-19 crisis. IPS is still working. All the employment specialists are working from home. They're using facilities such as Skype and Zoom to attend meetings. They're using telephone to contact clients. We're doing a lot of our vocational profiling over the phone, and this is enabling us to know what our clients' preferences are and what their skills and abilities are for when the time is right for us to be able to contact employers and match them to the right job. We're providing ongoing support to clients in work, usually through telephone contact or through online resources such as Zoom and Skype. A lot of the employment advisors have been doing a lot of the IPS training with IPS Grow, using webinars and doing training that is just online. They're also attending multidisciplinary team meetings and their regular team meetings with the clinical teams, usually through facilities such as Skype or Microsoft Teams. The challenges we've faced is not being able to have face-to-face contact with our clients and employers. This has sometimes felt very impersonal, and it also takes a lot longer to build that trust and relationship with our clients and our employers. Also, there's been an issue with clients who don't have access to the technology. And around us, when we usually go out and do sales calls with employers, we may just call into a business. The challenges with contacting employers has been that we've been able to just call in, especially to places like retail outlets, where we would often just call in and see the manager. Obviously, because this is only for essential items to go into those stores now, it would be inappropriate for us to just walk in and request an on-the-spot meeting.
Care Plus Wirral and Care Plus Liverpool is a franchise of the Care Plus network, where I've bought both franchises, and we're based in, our headquarters is based in Birkenhead. The business is in 2 sides. One side is a nursing agency, and the other side is home care, which is Care Quality Commission regulated. So I've got 2 separate workforces, and I provide jobs basically for local people.
How I met Louise was I was seconded into the DWP a couple of years ago as a community mental health partner, and I met her at a Disability Confidence event.
I first became involved with the IPS service when Sarah contacted me, and it's all about partnership working. Partnership working is a real strength, and that I'm always looking for partnerships that will assist my business but also assist the local community. And I was particularly liked the fact that the IPS was about helping people with mental health problems, getting them back into employment, local people back into employment, and it ticked all the boxes for me as an employer and for Care Plus as well.
So during lockdown, I was very aware that a lot of the care services were under a lot of pressure with staffing. So I gave Louise a bit of a courtesy call to see how things were going, if there was anything we could support her with. And she replied that she did need more staffing, and she was made up with the previous client we'd sent over to her. And if we had anybody else who matched his skills and abilities, that she would really like to meet with them. So I then went back to the team and explained what Louise was looking for.
During the COVID crisis, I got a phone call from Sarah just as a touching base with me. How's things going? And I just said, well, we've seen a lot of people coming into the community from the NHS. They're emptying their beds as quickly as possible, but we actually need more staff, and we are continuing to recruit at a very fast pace. And that's when Sarah said to me, well, I have got somebody in mind, and that's when Scott's name came up. So after the first phone conversation with Sarah, we then followed that up, both of us, with a face-to-face meeting, and that way we bottomed out exactly what Sarah wanted and what I could offer as an employer, because I didn't want to give any false promises, but I was also keen that it was actually what she said they were going to do on the tin was what they were going to do. And we left it in a way of, well, firstly, Sarah said to me, I've got somebody in mind, and I was then sent their CV. Then we discussed that particular person together, and we went with it. We just rolled with it. We didn't do anything different than any other application process.
So I went to meet Louise and I explained a little bit about the IPS service and what my new role was. She was really, really keen to get involved. I felt we could support her to achieve that disability confident leadership. So I had a conversation with her about my client, and then I provided her with a copy of his CV, and she offered to meet with him. So I arranged the meeting. We went to Care Plus and met with Louise. We had a quick discussion with her, and she offered him an interview there and then, and he accepted the interview.
I'm Scott. I'm a home care worker with Care Plus. Well, I've been receiving care as part of the Stein Centre for a few months now, and I inquired with my psychologist if there was any services for people like me who have been out of work for a few years who want to get back into it, a supported introduction into work. And luckily IPS was being rolled out in my area, so I got a meeting set up. I got involved with IPS during one of my sessions with my psychologist because I was feeling like I needed to get back into work and contribute to my society, and my psychologist informed me of IPS was being rolled out. I hadn't heard of anything like that, but it sounded perfect. Supported introduction back into employment, which is what I needed. So I filled out the forms.
I then left them for about half an hour and went back, and they'd agreed that he would begin working for her. A couple of weeks later, after all his checks, he started to work for Louise, and he gradually increased his hours and progressed through her service, and she was made up with him. She was really, really happy with, what he'd done and how he was working. So I've kept in touch with Louise around how things were going with him and if she was happy, and she was really made up with the work he was doing.
My employment specialist is a lady called Paula, who I get on with quite well. Since my introductory session with her, I've been having weekly meetings with her out in the community, most coffee shops on the Wirral we've been to. We discuss opportunities that she's made available, whether or not I'd want to go for them, what type of work I am interested in. She's pushed me to hand my CV in to employers, to speak to potential employers, which is not something I would have naturally done. Paula offered me support with my CV, interview techniques. She offered me a grant for interview clothing, which I didn't need, but it was nice to know it was there. So I chose to go into care because both myself and my mother have been receiving care for a number of years, and during that time I've witnessed the good and bad of the role, so I've got a passion to provide the best care possible.
Some people might ask, why why do I want to do this as an employer? I can recruit a lot of people. That basically goes back to me as a person. I've suffered from a mental health breakdown, as they call it. I've suffered clinical depression. I lost my job. I ended up on benefit. And I made a conscious decision. I'd been bullied at work of how I want to move forward with my life. And I got a second chance. And I did something and I turned my life around. And I came from quite a good place in the end. And it just showed me that anyone can have a mental health problem, can suffer from depression, can suffer from anxiety, and that there are sympathetic employers out there and empathetic employers. And it gave me the opportunity to give back. And I made some key decisions. I wanted to open my own business, be my own boss, and work locally with my local community. And again, goes back to IPS, ticks all those boxes for me.
So I had expressed a wish to work in care. It was between care and coffee shops, so that's what we were focusing on with my IPS worker. And during the COVID lockdown, I didn't think things would go so well on the job front, and for a little while they didn't. I didn't hear much apart from my regular weekly calls with Paula. But all of a sudden, Paula contacted me, asked if I'd be interested in going for a role in care with Care Plus, which I hadn't heard of, but it is local to me. I said yes, and it went from there really. I got my online training, I did that, and then I went into the office for a face-to-face, and then I think the next day I was on the job. I have no experience in care apart from the training which I've received, and I'm receiving a Care Plus, but I cared for my mother throughout my early years, which was a mental health issue, so it's kind of different to what I'm doing as a home care worker at Care Plus. I've worked retail previously, so it is a big change in terms of what I'm actually doing on the job, but so far so good.
We discussed Scott and what he may be, whether we could help him, and again, this seemed something that we could do. What happened then is I then put Scott through our normal processes, and he came through. He wasn't treated any differently, and he went into the mix and started doing his shadow shifts. And it was amazing really, because it was only me that knew that Scott had come from IPS, no one else did. And suddenly my registered manager approached me and said, "We've got a real jewel in the crown here with Scott." And I said, "In what way?" And I was told he is absolutely fantastic with clients, he's well liked, but he also is everything we're looking for a carer, and he's really stood out. And that was amazing, that was great. You know, not only has IPS worked well with me, but they've also found me really high quality people. And it just shows you that you can have a mental health problem, but you can still work full time, and you can still work, well, he wasn't working full time initially, but he's building up to that, but you can still be able to do something for yourself and your community. And I think the good thing for Scott, and he'll be interviewed as well, is that I imagine that would help his self-esteem. He's getting a pay. He's also being validated by people, not because of his mental health problem, but because of him and what he's doing as a role for us.
So prior to getting this job, I didn't think it would be possible for someone in my situation to integrate themselves back into work, but I'm seeing that it is possible, that I do have things to offer employers, and that I can function despite my difficulties.
I'm really happy with the relationship we've developed with Louise. She is a very supportive employer. I'm very confident that she would do whatever it takes to support the clients that we place with her, and we're really good at working together to do that as an IPS service and as an employer. And I know that Louise would have no hesitation in contacting me if she felt she needed any further support.
I see my future being a lot brighter than it was before my involvement with IPS and starting with Care Plus. I've got a job now which hopefully I'll go on to have in the future. After a certain amount of time I can start an MVQ in care, which I'm eager to begin. I'm working double ups now as opposed to just shadowing on singles, which means it's a lot more hands-on, I'm a lot more involved and I'm actually giving a lot more care. And finally, I feel really positive about the future.